Today we're going to dive into a really powerful psychological concept, and to do it, we're going to travel back in time, back to one of the most intense moments in modern history, the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Now, this was so much more than just an athletic event. It was a psychological crucible, a global stage where the immense weight of the world was carried on the shoulders of just a few young athletes. This is the story of the Atlas Complex.
Okay, so let's start right here. On one side, you've got this ancient myth, the Titan Atlas, punished by Zeus, forced to hold up the heavens for all of eternity. And on the other side, we have an actual part of our own bodies, the C1 vertebra. It's the very first bone at the top of our spine, and guess what it's called? The Atlas. Why? Because it literally holds up the globe of our skull. Now, this isn't just a clever name. It's a profound connection between a story we tell and the reality of our own bodies.
And what's really fascinating is how that name came to be. For the longest time, the name Atlas was actually used for a bone lower down in the neck. But during the Renaissance, anatomists made a very deliberate switch. They moved the name all the way to the top to C1, and that was a huge symbolic statement. They were saying that humanity's real burden had shifted. It wasn't about physical labor anymore. It was about the intellectual and emotional weight we carry around inside our heads. And that's the thing about myths, right? They're like blueprints for the human psyche.
And that brings us to a really core concept in analytical psychology, the Atlas complex. It's that deep-down gut feeling that you, and you alone, are responsible for holding everything and everyone together. It's this powerful belief that if you stumble, if you let go for just a second, your whole world, your family, your community, it's all going to collapse into chaos. It's a literal and, a figurative pain in the neck, that feeling of the world resting squarely on your shoulders.
So what does that actually feel like on the inside? Well, it starts with this compulsive sense of responsibility. From there, it leads to this profound isolation. Because if you're the only one who can do it right, then you can't trust anyone else to help. So to cope, you develop this stone-like defense. Maybe it's emotional numbness, maybe it's being hyper-vigilant all the time. And here's the kicker. Often, this is a phantom burden. It's an anxiety that's been passed down through generations, a type of intergenerational trauma. And because the stakes feel so incredibly high, quitting, well, that's just not an option.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. Because the Atlas complex isn't just a personal struggle. We need to see how this thing builds from an individual experience into a burden that's carried by entire groups of people. It can become a collective, cultural weight.
In psychology, we call this a cultural complex. You can think of it as the inner sociology of a group, if that makes sense. It's this unconscious pattern of thoughts and emotions, and it's born from a group's shared, repeated history, especially traumatic history. Things like systemic poverty or racism or sexism. These experiences get so baked into the culture that they actually shape how an entire group of people sees and reacts to the world.
So the really crucial point here is the source of the weight. For one person, an Atlas complex might grow out of their personal story, like a kid who, because of trauma, had to become the parent in their own home. But a cultural Atlas complex, that's totally different. That's a structural burden. It's a weight that's forced on an entire group by history and society. It's not something you choose, it's imposed on you.
Which brings us right back to where we started, the 1936 Berlin Olympics. This event became the ultimate stage, this incredible crucible where both types of Atlas complexes, the individual and the cultural, were put on this dramatic display for the entire world to see.
Let's start with Joe Rance and the University of Washington rowing team, the famous Boys in the Boat. These guys were forged in the fire of the Great Depression. Many of them, like Rance, who was literally abandoned by his family as a teenager, they developed this fierce individual Atlas complex. For them, rowing wasn't some Ivy League sport, it was survival. That boat was their only ticket to a hot meal and an education. Their burden was all about class, poverty, and abandoning.
Now, on the complete other side of the coin, you have Jesse Owens, and his burden was profoundly different. He carried a cultural Atlas complex. He had the weight of being the role model, the leader for his entire people. He was sent to Berlin to represent the ideals of American freedom against Hitler's fascist ideology, all while his own country was denying him his basic human rights through the crushing system of Jim Crow. The sheer psychological weight of that contradiction is just staggering.
This is what we call the double Atlas burden. It's this immense psychological split that happens when you're forced to carry two realities that are in complete opposition to each other. For Owens, he had to carry the light shadow, this idealized image of American greatness that he was supposed to project to the world. But at the same time, he was living the dark shadow, the brutal, crushing reality of racism back home. He was a hero to the world and a second-class citizen in his own country.
And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. You can see these two different paths that were forged under this immense pressure. You've got the boys in the boat carrying the individual burdens of poverty and class, and they learn to transform that into a collective strength. And then you have Jesse Owens carrying the cultural burden of race and representation, and he used his personal excellence to just shatter a global myth and fight for dignity.
But here's the really powerful, almost paradoxical truth about these psychological complexes. They aren't just wounds. They aren't just burdens. They are also sources of incredible, world-changing energy. It's a kind of psychological alchemy.
In psychology, we don't actually see complexes as being purely negative or pathological. They're reservoirs of what we call affective fuel. It's intense emotional energy. And when someone can become conscious of that weight they're carrying, they can learn to harness it. Both Jesse Owens and the rowers, they took the heavy, dense lead of their trauma, and they transformed it into the gold of historic, unbelievable achievement.
So for the rowers, the magic bullet was this thing called swing. See, at first, their individual atlas complexes, that deep-seated lack of trust born from being abandoned, it made them fight each other in the boat. Each one tried to carry the load alone, and it just made the boat feel heavy, sluggish, dead in the water. Swing was the exact opposite. It was this almost mystical state of perfect harmony that demanded absolute, complete trust. And what's so crucial here is that by learning to distribute that load, they didn't just become a faster rowing team, they actually healed the core wound of their atlas complex. For these young men who were defined by abandonment, they created an unbreakable brotherhood. They proved to themselves, and to the entire world, that they were not doomed to carry their burdens all alone.
Jesse Owens' path, well, it had to be different. It was more solitary. His alchemical solution is a concept that the psychologist Fanny Brewster calls racial grace. Think about it. Faced with the pure hatred of the Nazi regime on one side and the hypocrisy of his own country on the other, Owens developed this powerful, internal shield of incredible poise and dignity.
Now, this grace was not passive. No way. It was a formidable psychological defense. It allowed him to simply refuse to absorb all the toxic projections being thrown at him. So instead of being crushed by the weight of what the world wanted him to be or what it hated him for, he performed with the strength of his own integrated self. He achieved this profound level of what we call self-individuation, becoming truly, fully himself in the face of all of it.
So, what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from all this? How can this crushing weight actually be healed? How do we transform this burden, this feeling of condemnation, into a source of real, enduring strength and resilience?
Well, the first, most crucial step in healing is a process we call differentiation. And it's the really hard work of untangling your own identity from the burden you've been carrying. It means recognizing that the weight on your shoulders might not have started with you, that it could be an inherited story from your family or from your culture. It's learning where the world's weight ends and where your own true self begins.
This process leads to a really clear path. Step 1, you have to acknowledge the weight. Give it a name. Is it personal? Is it cultural? Step 2, find your method. Do you need to learn to trust others, to distribute the load, to find your version of swing? Or do you need to build that internal shield, your own kind of grace? And that leads to differentiation and finally to transformation. The complex stops being a curse and instead becomes a source of incredible grit, adaptability, and resilience.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought to reflect on. We've all felt the weight of the world on our shoulders at some point. The real question is, how do we respond? So think about it. When have you felt that weight in your own life? And more importantly, how did you learn to trust the boat? Because reflecting on our own burdens and how we've learned to either share them or stand strong within them, that is the first, most powerful step toward finally being able to set that world down.